You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I'm guessing you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, considering getting on the mats, or maybe you're inspiring others to be the best version of themselves. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you want to learn self-defense, start training jiu-jitsu. I'd like to welcome Sula-Mae Loewenthal to my podcast. Hi, Sula-Mae, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's so fantastic that you're here after an amazing 2024. Let's start with that. Tell me about ADCC.
Yeah, 2024 was kind of a crazy year for me. I didn't know if ADCC would be on the horizon for 2024 at the beginning of the year. I just had like some vague plans to do the trials. And then I did the European trials in February, I believe, and lost in I think my third match. And that kind of fueled the fire to go to the Asia Australian ones because I've got dual citizenship, so I'm lucky enough to be able to do both. And so I was like, okay, cool. I booked my tickets to Thailand and then just basically took off the gi. Sadly, put it in the corner for a couple of months and just focused only on no gi for a while. And then, I managed to win the trials, which was, again, a bit of a shock for me because I didn't necessarily feel the best going into it. I had a lot of anxiety and nerves going into that competition. I really believed that I would win. I knew I would be facing someone who had lost before to multiple times. That was Nadia. And so I was kind of a bit iffy about what my performance would look like. And I just went there and I guess managed to get into the zone and managed to win the trials, which was kind of crazy because I think it was something that I had imagined myself doing but never really believed that would happen necessarily. And definitely not so soon in my career at brown belt. So that was really cool. And then kind of just dived into preparation for ADCC. So I booked my tickets to Portugal to go train with Victor Estima for a couple of months. Well, 6 weeks in preparation for ADCC. And then, got to ADCC and man, it was kind of a bit of a blur. The whole experience was a bit, I would just say out of this world. It's kind of Vegas itself is just crazy. So extreme and elaborate. And then on top of that, this massive tournament and it was very, very crazy and overwhelming for sure. A lot of my family actually came with me. So that was really cool. But and then the competition itself was incredible. It was so cool to be able to be there. And I fought Bia in the first fight, Bia Mesquita, and just lost in the first fight. But I felt like it was a really cool taste of the level that I need to be at to compete in these top level competitions. So I think, to be honest, I kind of showed up so still in shock that I was even there. So I was kind of but it was a really cool experience. And then
amazing.
It's still processing it, I think.
Now, you kind of talk about ADCC being a really big kind of spectacular event. Have you experienced anything else like that in any other area of your life that might have prepared you for that? Or are you just straight in with big level experiences?
I think no, not really. I mean, I did school plays. That was about it. I like performing. I like being on the big stage. So I think I thrive in that environment. But that was the biggest that I've ever been on, for sure, by miles. So it was definitely a bit of a shock to the system.
Well, it does sound, the kind of jump from school plays. I do want to quickly, just for a few minutes, Sula-Mae, tell me which school plays you're in.
Oh my God, I don't even remember the names. We definitely did Les Mis when I was 12, but I don't remember what character I was at all.
Okay. That's a pretty big show.
It was a good one. That was fun.
Okay, good. And anything else? Anything else we can draw out?
From my school plays or from ADCC?
Yeah, from school plays.
I don't even remember the names of them. I think they were
But other ones.
Oh, I did that one that was oh my god, what's it called? Oh god. The one where someone's in love with someone. It's like a love triangle.
Oh, goodness. I mean, kind of all of them. I've been in a number of school, university plays as well, so that sparked my interest. I've done Guys and Dolls, Grease. I think I did all the kind of stage lighting and kind of more behind the scenes. But Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was a very good show. Yeah, just lots of other things, even from a much younger age. But I'm assuming it's not any of those. So
it was a Shakespeare one.
Very serious.
Yeah, that one was very serious.
Okay, so a completely different level. I'm in the musical category, and you're in the you're still in the musical category, but more sophisticated plays. I like it. I'm not sure where that takes me for my big performance career ahead of me. I have no idea. So the experience just being in ADCC for all of the trials, are the trials as big an affair as the kind of the big show?
No, the trials are just like regular opens, like they're in terms of the way the production and stuff, they're just like a normal competition. So you're very aware of the importance of it, but it just feels like a normal comp. So it doesn't feel, it feels special because like, you know what the consequence could be, but at the same time, it's like a very familiar environment. So there's no preparation for the actual thing. That
sounds it sounds very reassuring for anyone to kind of go through ADCC trials, but then to be dropped into something as big as the ADCC competition you were involved with, and then tell me about that particular match and you winning. I remember watching it on screen and going, oh my goodness, what an amazing situation. And I was so overjoyed and inspired. It almost came as a shock to you, maybe. I don't know. Talk me through how that was.
Well, as I said, I lost to Nadia twice before. Is it twice? Yeah. The December before. So only like 6 months previously. And I think she'd submitted me both times, or maybe she submitted me once and almost submitted. Anyway, it was like good wins that she had on me. And so I went into the fight very much like I knew I could win, but I didn't know how, if that makes sense. Like I hadn't, like I knew that there was a world where I could win, but I hadn't figured that part out before the fight yet. Some fights I go into knowing like, yeah, I know I can win this and I know how I can win this. But that one I was kind of like, I don't know how I can win this. And all I can say is like during the fight, I think I was, for the whole competition actually, I was in a very different state than I normally am in. I was in a completely, I think I entered a flow state in every single fight. And when I was off the mat, I was just in a state of pure anxiety of like I was literally, I wanted to leave the event between every single fight. And the only reason I didn't is because my husband was there and he would not let me. Thank you. But yeah, once I got on the mat for each fight, I just stopped being myself and went into like that state of flow that athletes talk about. That's really cool to enter. So I think in that fight with Nadia, I definitely entered that flow state. And that was really cool because I was very non-emotional, very focused, very just factual in terms of like, this is what needs to happen. And it was very clear. I could hear very clearly my husband who was coaching me. And I was kind of just doing whatever he said. So he was like, get the underhook, do it. I kind of just felt like I was very like clinical about it. And then the fight went into overtime. And did it go into overtime? Can't remember. At one point we were standing up and I knew I couldn't pull guard because maybe it was at the beginning. Sorry, it was a long time ago now. But anyway, in the finals, you can't pull guard, and I'm not great at stand up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do here, because like
Yeah.
I don't know how to engage in stand up, and I can't
Yeah.
pull guard because of the penalty. So I ended up like feeling her out a bit, and she's quite good at wrestling. I felt her out for a little bit, and I found this like takedown that I knew she wanted, that I could feel that she wanted, and I found a way that would mean that if she took me down, she would end up in my closed guard. And it was still the first half of the fight, so there was no points. So I was like, she did it once and I defended it, and then the second time I was like, I'm going to let her take me down because there's not going to be any points on the board and I'm going to be in closed guard. And I think that decision was like crucial, because that put me in my dominant position and her in her not so dominant position. And then I think from that moment on, I started to believe that I could finish the fight, because I felt that I was like, oh, because in other fights with her, I'd felt like, I don't know how I can get to a good, like how I can finish her. But then as soon as she was in my closed guard, I was like, okay, no, I actually can. And the fight changed and moved around, and she almost passed my guard a couple of times. She almost took my back at one point. But then I ended up with her back in my closed guard towards the end. And I just went for a submission. And I just remember like my husband shouting and being like, just go for it, break the arm, break the arm. And I was like, all right, I'll try. Because she's amazing. So I was like, I have to really like go for it, because I think previously in the time I fought her before, she didn't tap to an armbar or something, and I've seen her like not tapping to things before, so I was like, I need to really go for it. And then I felt like I was in a dream after that, because I was like, there's no way that this is real. I must be dreaming this. And I stayed in that state for a long time. Like I remember going off the mat and being like, Bruno, can you just hit me, please? Because I don't really understand what happened. I don't think this is real. And he was like, calm down.
There's so much footage. You have to believe it's real. In one of my previous episodes, I talk about capturing these moments kind of with photos and video. It was real. It happened.
It was weird. And then it took days to just process it. So I was like, oh, that really happened. And even now it feels so far away. I think like one thing, being the athlete now, looking back on it, it feels weird because that version of me feels so far away in a sense. And I also feel the exact same as before. It's like, it's kind of this thing of like, life doesn't change. These things don't really actually have as much of a massive impact on our lives as we think they do. And if I could have spoken to that girl before and been like, hey, like, this is going to be really cool. You're going to have fun, but it's not that deep. It's not that important. You're not going to feel that different after. Don't expect your whole life to change. Don't expect you to be like this crazy different person. Because like you're here for the long game, and it's not going to be like from one competition, everything just switches. Some people that is the case. But I think we have this idea that like you win a medal or you win a title and then your whole life changes. Reality is not necessarily like that.
I'm pleased that it doesn't. But I also want to just come back to the fact that of pulling guard in the finals of an ADCC will cause you a penalty, counts out so many of us from getting to there. We've got to change our games right now. So I'm mindful to work on my stand-up game. If I am ever in my next, 30, 40 years of, training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I've got some work to do.
Yeah, that was definitely one thing that I was like, okay, that needs to change. And it's still a huge area of weakness for me. But it's also, I think every athlete has different parts that they're really good at and parts that they're weaker at. And it's good. I think it's good that different rule sets have different rules, because it forces you to work on some stuff like that you should work on, because jiu-jitsu, you should be kind of well-rounded. So I think that's a good one.
Agreed. Now, I was at Polaris 30 and saw your amazing match. Quickly talk to me about that, because it was very quick.
Yeah, that was a fun match. That was, I think for me, there's always matches that are good and I'm proud of my performance. And then there's matches that I just have so much fun in.
Yeah.
And the first time I fought Rosa was I was a purple belt, she was a brown belt. And that was in 2022. And we fought on Grapple Fest. And she won that fight by ref's decision. But it was the same thing where like I left the fight, and I think she did as well, being like, oh my God, that was so much fun. Like we just had so many different scrambles and so many different points where I had her in submissions and she had me in submissions, and it was so back and forward. And like the crowd was like, what the hell is happening? Like it was a show. It really felt like a performance. And so this Polaris, I was kind of like, I knew it would be like a show again, because I think both of us, we have such styles that it's not necessarily they clash, they kind of go together perfectly, because she's a top player and I'm a bottom player. So it's kind of like the ideal matchup of like super aggressive and like strong and like a bit like fast twitch, which is her, versus me, which is a little bit more like I don't know, flowy maybe, but when you mix them together, it's like just crazy. So I was really excited for the rematch. And it was the week that I got my black belt, and I had this like feeling of it had just been such a fun week. I got my black belt, it was my birthday, had like so many fun things happening, and then I was like, cool, let's go do Polaris. My niece and nephew actually were watching as well. They're 3 and 5, and so they'd come to watch, and so I had the idea of the audience like cheering me on as well. And again, I kind of just entered that flow state of like just doing jiu-jitsu and having fun with doing jiu-jitsu. And I knew that Rosa is a super scrappy fighter. And I was like, if I give her an inch, she's going to take it. So I kind of had to just go in and be like, and also Rosa's like lovely. Like I really respect her and I think she's amazing. So I was like, but on the mats, it's the mats, you know, like we have to both. And I think for me anyway, with competing, I think it's really cool to be able to have like people who you love and respect, but then also try to kill each other on the mat. That's like, for me, that's like the best mix. But I was like, I can't give her an inch because she will take it, and then I can't control where the fight goes. So I just went for it and was trying to be a super on the offensive from the get-go.
You were.
And I think that helped me. Because I think it put her on the back foot a little bit from the start. But she still managed to escape, get my mount, and nearly get me in a heel hook towards the end. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, again, I gave her an inch and she took it. I was like, damn it. So again, like, okay, I can't like, And then it was a really fun fight though. I really enjoyed it.
It was incredibly exciting. I took my 2 children, and it was one of the most exciting matches. And we were all cheering. And I think, you know, having that fun connection that you had on Polaris with Rosa, it shone through. And you mentioned about, you know, giving her an inch, then she's going to take that opportunity. But likewise, so are you. So I think, you know, it was amazing. And I was so pleased that you were on Polaris and that you'd received your black belt that same week, which was just incredible.
Yeah. Big week.
This is the Jiu-Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Go and check out the latest video clips over on jiu.jitsu.lu on Instagram. And as you're listening or watching on your favourite podcast platform, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Today, I'm having a conversation with Sula-Mae Loewenthal. Sula-Mae, let's get on to talk about the intro at the beginning of the show. Talked about inspiring others to be the best version of themselves. Aside from you being a high-level female athlete based in the UK and inspiring all of us to want to be better, how do you operate and kind of support others to be more inspired and to be the best version of themselves?
It's a very good question. I think it's like there's like 2 sides of it. I think one side is the mindset side of it. And for me, that's just trying. And actually it takes the pressure off myself to be to try to be perfect or to have like these perfect results. I think keeping in mind that like my failures and my setbacks and stuff is just as valuable for people as my accomplishments.
Yeah.
And so I think leading with that mindset of like, yeah, like it's going to be just as valuable for people to see me fail as it would for me to succeed. That helps me just to do it and go for it and not try to be perfect. And then on a practical level, I think I've been very lucky that I've been able to teach jiu-jitsu since the beginning. I've been teaching since white belt. And I always say that like I think I learn more from my students than I teach, because I think they just highlight, like I teach jiu-jitsu, but they highlight so many details in the techniques, ask questions, and then they'll always, every time I'm teaching something, I have to adapt it for somebody different or explain it in a different way or deal with some type of question that doesn't make sense to me or anything. Like there's so many different ways that students like kind of have like this almost like a mirror holding up to myself of like, am I the best that I can be? Because, and it's accountability, I think, because it's very easy to just, if you're just here for your own growth, it's very easy to drop off. But when I feel like I have this responsibility for like keeping other people on top of their growth as well, it seems to help me. So maybe it's selfish that I do that.
I think it's a very good mission. And you mentioned, kind of having mirrors and kind of being people giving you the reflection for learning and growth as much as themselves. And I think, that's really honourable that you're learning and being able to see your own growth as well as see and empower other individuals' growth. Any notable, not necessarily with naming names, any particular growth points in your teaching career of jiu-jitsu that have stood out and made you reflect a bit more on your own kind of performance?
I think at the moment, one of the biggest things as I expand, I'm more focusing on like the element of not just teaching jiu-jitsu, but also mentoring people how to teach and become coaches themselves. And like that is a whole different level because you're then trying to facilitate someone else's growth, but also giving them the space to find their own self as a coach while also giving feedback and not being too critical, but also making sure that they have the feedback so that they're not just going forward without guidance, but then also knowing that my feedback isn't necessarily like the best for them. So like trying to navigate the balance between how to push someone and put them into more uncomfortable positions and trust that they'll make mistakes and that it's okay, but also like giving them guidance through it. So I think that's been a really cool part of my journey, which is starting to appear now. Because I love watching people really kind of step into their power as a coach as well and being like, oh, like, wow, look what I can do on the mats, but also what I can then give back to other people and like find that new level of like fulfillment for those people that want that.
I think, whilst that might sound selfish, actually, to nurture those feelings of giving back and the joy and pride you must feel in seeing not just the coaches you're training, but the individuals that the coaches are kind of training along the way, and then potentially see their journeys through through kind of belts and even kind of beyond into competition themselves.
For sure.
You are incredibly inspiring, Sula-Mae. I will put that out there. Inspiring in many ways. But I just want to also reflect on the fact that you've been a Gracie Barra ambassador for a number of years. Tell me how that started and, how long you've been an ambassador for, because some people might be a little bit surprised. I certainly was.
I first applied for the ambassador program at the end of 2018. And my sister, was it 2018? My sister was actually the one who told me about it. She was working with me at the moment. At that time, she was managing the school that I was teaching at, and she found out about it, and she was like, oh my God, you have to apply for this. And I was like, what are you talking about? No way would they choose me, like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, do it. Like, what's the worst case? And I ended up applying, and actually my husband also applied that year, and we both got it. And I was like, what? This is so cool. So that was 2019. Yeah. And then I basically stayed ambassador. I had like 1 year break from since then until now. But yeah, it's been a really long journey as an ambassador for Gracie Barra. And I think I've always been one to take that very seriously in terms of like how I show up and how I represent the team and all of that. Because I think it's mostly, I just think of like the new generation or the younger generation of people that are like inspired to be that, to be able to become an ambassador one day and have this opportunity, because it really was a huge thing for me. Not even just the financial side of things, but just the idea that like somebody who I didn't know personally believed in my potential. Like a group of people had sat there and decided like, yes, this person is worth us putting our time and energy and money into. And I was like, that's so crazy, because it's one thing when your coach says like, yeah, you can do it, like go for it. But it's different when like your team is like, no, we've got you, we're backing you. You're like, whoa, okay. So I have had this feeling all along of like this big responsibility, but in a really good way of like, well, if my team believes in me, then I can do this, and I'll figure out a way to do it and to represent the team properly.
I like the fact that, you know, you might not have had the answers to start with, but you figured out the journey and, you know, how to kind of show up and represent in quite a superb way. You're an incredible role model for many young athletes coming through. Taya Jones, who I've had on the show, she's just become a GB ambassador for this year, and her mum was kind of sworn to secrecy, and it kind of happened at the beginning of 2025, and Taya was just over the moon. And I think, you know, she's got so much of her journey still to go at the age of 12, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I love that so much.
So tell me about any other affiliations or any other kind of commitments you have in the jiu-jitsu world at the moment.
So at the moment, I'm actually only working with one other affiliation, and that's with Matador. I'm very picky with who I work with, just because I really like to work with people who I like kind of trust and believe in their mission as well. Because I think for me, marketing has to be authentic. So I'm like, I don't want to represent someone who I'm not like 100% in with. So I've been working with Matador. They sponsored me for ADCC, and we just got along really well, and it worked great. And then we're just in the process now of renegotiating for the following year, for this year. Probably by the time this goes out, that would be all through and everything. But yeah, absolutely. I'm just excited. It's very new at the moment. I think like it's still just an idea of like what's happening. It's in the beta stage in terms of testing the app and everything. But I'm really excited to see what it does, because I think at the moment, for those that don't know, Matador is like a seminar hosting app, but and seminar hosting and getting seminars and stuff is really a lot of work at the moment, I think, for athletes, and a lot of work for school owners and all of that. So I think to be able to simplify that and make it a little bit more streamlined and less awkward as well is going to be so much better, because as an athlete, like, you have so many things to think about. You're trying to like make money, you're trying to you're probably teaching, you're trying to manage your strength conditioning, your nutrition, your training, your travel, all of this stuff. And then on top of that, you're trying to like beg people to let you teach seminars, and sometimes you don't know if they want you to teach, or like if you're just asking. Like it's such a weird one. So it'd be really cool to have that kind of centralized.
I think it's incredible, you know, just being able to understand the demand and have, you know, kind of top level athletes like yourself going to where the demand is in terms of, you know, people wanting kind of seminars. But like with many of us in the jiu-jitsu world, you know, we have gi, we have no gi kit, we will travel, and we will make the effort to see and be inspired by individuals like you who host seminars. Yes, I'm intrigued as to what your seminar topics might be, if we couldn't already guess. Where where do you think you will be? You know, what type of content might someone be interested? You know, what type of topic will you be hosting, do you think?
I generally start with the guard, just because I feel like if someone's going to come to my seminar, then it makes sense for me to go with the place that like is the most on point for me. But if I'm doing multiple seminars, then I'll travel from the guard to like I find like back control and attacks from the back and mount and stuff like that really also one of my really strong points. So I branch, it really depends, but it kind of all starts from the guard, and just looking at different ways to maintain control and submit the person, but also just I like to think about like taking their soul before I try and take the submission, because a lot of the time
that sounds really scary.
I feel like a lot of the time people try to attack stuff before the person's defeated, and then it's so much harder because the person's still like going, you know. But if you're able to make the person feel like wherever they go there's a dead end, then they're going to start to be defeated. And there's this weird thing that happens when you feel this person's feeling like a bit lost, their energy kind of becomes yours, and then it's so much easier to get what you want. It sounds really
it sounds terrifying, but I like the idea of taking someone's soul before you submit them.
It's a really cool feeling when it happens though.
Not for the exactly, not for the person being submitted, but hopefully that's none of us.
But you give it straight back to them after the fight, so it's fine.
Okay. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, I didn't think this conversation was going to go down that route, Sula-Mae. I thought you were a very gentle, lovely individual, not a soul taker. Anyway.
I'm actually evil.
If anyone gets to this far during the episode, you will not believe it. Sula-Mae, what is coming up for you for the rest of 2025? Tell me.
So my biggest goal for 2025 was to not overload myself, because I have a tendency to do too many competitions in like a short space of time. And I did that like 2 years in a row. So now I'm like, okay, let me not do that again. So that's my goal. I don't know if I'm going to achieve it, but I'll do my best. So at the moment, the only things on the calendar are I've got the London Open, which will have already happened when this goes out. And then I'm potentially going to do a couple of opens around Europe, but we'll see. But the big ones is going to be definitely Worlds and potentially Brasileiros in the end of April. But again, question mark there. Yep. So those two. And then I'm going to take a good chunk of time off during the summer from competing. So my goal is to take off at least from like tournaments up until like September or October. So I'll take off a period of time before no-gi season comes back. So then I'll do no-gi Euros and no-gi Worlds and kind of get back into this no-gi season for the upcoming ADCC year in 2026. So not
Amazing.
too much on the horizon, and I'm happy about that.
Strategic approach.
Yeah, I still have some space for like if super fights come up, if they're like if a good super fight comes up, I'll have space for that. But I'm trying not to plan too much and give space for a little bit of rest and like more focus on like actually improving my jiu-jitsu. Because it's actually really hard to improve your jiu-jitsu when you're competing a lot, I've realized.
Okay. That's an interesting thing. So there's benefit in continuing to train rather than competing. I will take that one as a win. Okay. One can't progress their training if they're competing too much. Okay.
I think time is, but Yeah, it's hard to do both extremely well if you've got loads of comps back to back, because you just kind of burn yourself out.
I was just making excuses for anyone that doesn't compete very much, that legitimizing our own training and kind of growth and performance. If are there any particular super fights you dream of doing over the next couple of years, Sula-Mae?
To be honest, nothing that like stands out to me. I think I am up for anything, really. I'm happy to fight any amazing girls because there's so many amazing women. But yeah, there's nothing that I'm like, there's no one that's in my head, or like, because I find personally, at the moment I'm trying to take I don't know how to explain this, but like at the moment I'm trying to work on my mindset actually a lot.
Yeah.
So I've started working with sports psychologists. I've started just trying to take the pressure off of like fighting certain people or beating certain people or winning certain things, and still doing them all with the intention of winning, of course, but not. I think what ADCC showed me is that like a single competition, like winning trials, for example, doesn't change you or anything that happens in your life. Yeah. Or not winning something like that, like not winning ADCC, for example, doesn't mean that I'm then not good enough or whatever. Or if I won, it doesn't mean I would be good enough. So I think I'm trying to, at the moment, figure out how to rewire that idea of like chasing titles and chasing people to beat, and like, because I think that's never ending, and then I personally don't think I'll find fulfillment in that. So I'm trying to view competition in a different way at the moment. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to me yet because I'm still learning it. But I want to compete with 100% with the intention of actually just getting better at jiu-jitsu, which I know at the moment half of the intention is like, I want to get praise and attention and all of that for winning and doing well.
Yeah.
So it's not truly about growth, which I need to then shift, because then you build up this pressure and you build up this expectation and you build up this pain around competition, which affects your training, which affects your relationships, which affects your work, and it affects your mental health. And it means you have lots of ups and downs in your performance and lots of ups and downs in your mood around competitions.
Yeah.
And it's just not really the healthiest way to live. So yeah, that's what I'm focusing on at the moment.
It's great that you have that awareness that there's a kind of, a gap in your kind of mental game around all of this, that actually, that's come up now, and you're working with individuals to kind of progress and learn and develop more in that space. Now, you previously spoke about flow. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to get into a flow state during sparring or during competition? Any kind of hints or advice that you can offer? I know we might all have our own ways to get into flow state, and it means different things to different people, but from your perspective.
I think it's so interesting, because I think flow state is very, very different for different people. Some people, from a perspective of an instructor, I can see people that are in flow state versus people who aren't when I'm teaching them. And it's very different teaching the two different groups of people. Yeah. And there are some people that just get on the mats and they're just in flow state already. And I'm like, great, that would be nice. And then there are some people that are the overthinkers that are almost never in that flow state. I think I weave between them. I think when I first started, I was most of the time in the flow state, which is weird. And then as I progressed, I started to put more expectations on myself and think more like highly of myself, and have this idea that I should be like a lot of shoulds, and all of that started to take me out of the flow state and put me into this overthinking state. So now I think I flow between the two a lot. Yep. I'd like to be more in the flow like I was as white and blue. Yeah. But I think the more you expect yourself to know and be able to do, the less you'll be in the flow state. So what I try to tell to my students is like, it doesn't matter what belt you are, you're always gonna, like the way you feel at a certain belt is going to stay the same on every belt if you don't change the way you feel. Like, a lot of people will feel insecure when they get their blue belt, for example. And if they don't address that insecurity on a deep level, that's going to stay till black belt. And I think a lot of people think that it goes away as you grow into the belt or as you get better or whatever. But actually the mindset doesn't change unless you change the mindset. The skill, it doesn't matter how good you get, it doesn't actually change the mindset. And the mindset stops you from getting better too. So I think if you can come to the mats with this mindset of, my only goal and the only thing I expect of myself is to keep trying to learn every day, that's fine. It doesn't even mean you need to learn every day, because sometimes you're not going to be able to take on information. But just as long as you're constantly coming with the learning attitude of like, let me try and learn something today, then I believe that it's much easier to enter the flow state, because you're not thinking about like, okay, I'm going to this class, I need to tap that person out, I need to be able to do a push-up, I need to be able to do this thing, and I need to make sure that I make my professor proud, whatever. All those things are going to be in your head when you're trying to do things. And actually like 50% of your brain is taken up or more by those thoughts rather than just doing it. So some practical things that help me with that is journaling. For ADCC specifically, I journaled like just a couple of lines every single morning and every single night for like 2 months about how I wanted to feel on the day of the competition. And it was just like really simple stuff, literally about me feeling in a flow state. So it was like, today I felt super focused, I had no emotions, I was not overthinking, I was like, and that's all it was, really, really simple of like what I wanted my performance to feel like. So I think journaling like that can really help. Like, say for example, you're really anxious on the mats, writing like, okay, oh my God, today the training session was amazing, I had zero anxiety, I was so focused, I was so relaxed, I didn't care what people thought of me, I was just focused on learning the techniques. And the key is the repetition, so doing it every night, every morning, because then your brain, like, I didn't believe it for trials, but by the time I got there, once I was warming up and I was like, I don't want to be here, but then once I got through my warm-up, my brain switched and went into exactly what I told it to think the last 2 months, and it was just like, I'm super focused on this and that, or it was literally and then when I went back to read my journal entries, I was like, well, that's exactly how it was today, that's so weird. So I love
the journaling, and I think it's really important to be able to express how you might feel as something in the future, as if you kind of own and have that now. But actually listening to you, that preparation and mindset doesn't just start in competition. It starts in maybe the warm up prior to competition. I can see some kind of improvement and kind of areas to expand that flow state and the gratitude piece that will just make things even more lovely. And I think when we're in flow state, there's often a number of surprises, and we're surprised at our ability or our strength or our performance or whatever it is, and that's as an outcome is really joyful to feel on the back of flow state.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think also one thing with flow state, which I've learned over the years, actually from my husband, he's the one that highlighted it to me. It changes, and it's okay for like one day to be like looking like this and another day to look like this. Like some days my flow state is me like listening to like the Barbie soundtrack and I'm dancing and I'm literally smiling so much. And I'm like,
I love that.
But some days my flow state is focused music that has no beats, head down, game face. And what I used to do was like try and force something, like, okay, I have to do this because that's what got me into the flow state the last time. Actually, it's about like, what do I feel like doing now? Do I feel like dancing, or do I feel like sitting here? And then just listening to that. Sorry.
That's incredible advice and just listening to ourselves. Before we wrap up this episode, when you're listening to the Barbie album, which is your favorite track?
I was listening to, well, I've got a couple, but the one I really like is I think it's called Lover and Fighter or something.
Yep.
So good, because it's like the perfect pace for like jumping about a little bit before the comp, and it's like talking about being a lover, being a fighter, doing whatever you want to be. Kind of, that's so good. I love that one.
Yeah. I think that might be Choose Your Fighter. That's one of my favourites, as well as whenever I've been driving my children to competition, we put the Barbie album on really loud, and it's usually Speed Drive, Butterflies, or Choose Your Fighter. Anyway, thank you for those bits. Now, everyone should be following you on Instagram, and if they are not, how can they?
Yes, my Instagram is really simple. It's my name, Sula_Mae with an MAE, BJJ. So you can find me there. That's pretty much where you'll see my stuff. And have fun.
Fantastic. And of course, on the Matador app very, very soon. Thank you so much, Sula-Mae. I really appreciate your time and wish you joyous flow state for your future competitions and teachings, and just wishing you a wonderful future.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for telling your friends about this show. And as soon as this episode ends, I'd really appreciate you dropping a show a rating and a review. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Podcast.